Hi, welcome to ADHD. Editing Leslie here, future Leslie here. By the way, my name is Leslie. Welcome to my channel. What the heck does ADHD mean anyway? Well, that's the same thing I asked myself at 3 o'clock this morning when I woke up out of a dead sleep and had this great idea to start an auxiliary channel to my creative channel, which is called Art Design Heart, that talks more about the mental health side of my ADHD. Art Design Heart deals with the creative side of my ADHD and maximizing and kind of leaning into the idea of having so many different interests. And I wanted to separate out the whole mental health thing from the creative process. Obviously, that's not totally able to be separated, but I didn't want people to get bogged down who might not be there for that part of the content. So I decided to create a second channel, as many other creators have done, to focus on my journey through my ADHD diagnosis. So 2 years ago, just shy of the age of 61, I was diagnosed with ADHD. A moderate to severe form of inattentive ADHD, that is. And to say that that diagnosis has changed my life would be an understatement, or at least a very accurate statement. And what I mean by that is I have struggled with so many things during my entire life that just did not make sense. I had people asking me, why can't you do XYZ? Why can't you balance your checkbook? Back when we actually had checkbooks and wrote physical checks. Or why can't you keep up with your housework? Or why can't you do your homework on time? And things like that. And I just had no idea. I didn't understand why my brain was not letting me do these things. Well, it turns out that all along I've had ADHD. And ADHD, as those of you who are here probably know, one of the hallmarks is executive functioning disorder, and that's a difficulty in doing the basic things that one needs to do for oneself in order to exist on this planet. So about 2005, I had a head injury at work. And I ended up taking something called Provigil that helped with the concentration, helped with the need to sleep all the time. When your brain is injured, it needs to sleep to repair itself, but sometimes you still need to function. So I ended up taking that for several years. My cognitive defects, for the most part, and my speech defects all resolved within a matter of about 2 or 3 years. And for a time, a couple years after that, they would trigger when I was tired or when I was stressed. But now, coming on, many years later, let's just say that, they're completely gone. But I didn't realize at the time that one of the reasons why I struggled so hard with my head injury, which I would find out in discussions during my ADHD evaluation, is that I had ADHD. So I already had difficulties with executive function. I already had difficulties with concentrating. I already had difficulties with this distraction. And the head injury just exacerbated all that. So let's go back to that time, my head injury in 2005. Well, at the time, I had just bought a house for my mom to move into. My mom was getting on in years, and she needed help. She'd been ill on and off for about 10 years, and we knew that she was getting towards the end of her life, and she just needed help. So we bought a house together, and the idea was that I would gut this house and I would prep it out for her. I created a mother-in-law suite. I was in the midst of all of this reno when I had the head injury, and everything came to a complete stop for months and months on end. And it was a real blow to us because my intent was to get this reno done in about 6 months. She would move in. We'd have a couple of years together, and or however many years she had left. As it turned out, she didn't have that much time left. But so what ended up happening is when she died, I went into a deep depression. And I've struggled with depression all my life, which, as we'll discuss later, I think is really tied to the ADHD, the untreated and undiagnosed ADHD. But I've struggled with depression and anxiety all my life, and it just went downhill after my mom died because we were very close. And she was a huge support to me, and I to her. So when that happened, I did end up losing my house, and eventually I ended up losing my job. And making a long story short, I ended up on disability for depression and anxiety. And that was a really difficult time. I was to a point where I wasn't answering the phone. I wasn't answering the door. I had a dog and I had 2 cats, and I was taking care of them, and that was my main focus. I wasn't taking care of myself. I had kind of locked myself away in this dungeon of depression. I was just hanging my feet over the abyss. So my friends helped me out, helped me get treatment. It took a couple years, but I ended up getting on disability. I ended up losing another home through eviction. And I'm trying to remove the stigma from these kinds of things. I didn't do it because that didn't happen because I'm a terrible person. It didn't happen because I'm irresponsible, as my family likes. Some of my family, I have some amazing family. Some of them, not so much. It didn't happen because I'm irresponsible. It didn't happen because I'm selfish. I'm whatever those negative voices that have been in my head for 60 years have told me. And I learned that it's because my brain is different. It's because my brain needs to be managed differently. It's because I needed coping skills I didn't have. I needed medication. And when I got diagnosed with moderate to severe ADHD, inattentive type, in just shy of my 61st birthday, literally days shy of my 61st birthday, it was like a light bulb turned on. I know that people say this, you probably heard this said by many people other than me, and it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual thing. Before my diagnosis, it took about 2 years to actually get seen and get the testing done and get my evaluation back. But in those 2 years, I started looking at ADHD videos, and I started reading about it. I started listening to content creators on YouTube. An amazing one that I recommend wholeheartedly is How to ADHD. That channel is amazing. I still watch it. I still am very grateful for all the tools it has given me. I'm grateful for the perspective it has given me. And in viewing channels like that, and in learning more about ADHD, and learning more about how the brain works and why the brain works the way it does, and how to manage and cope, I learned a lot about myself. And I learned that a lot of the negative self-talk that was a lot of what people had told me over the years. It wasn't things that I necessarily told myself, but when people told me these things, I took them in and I made them my own. And those people's voices lived in my head as my own voice. And I didn't even realize that was happening. But there was so much negative self-talk. So even before I got the diagnosis, I had gone on disability. I was getting therapy several times a week. I was in intensive therapy and trying to figure out why my brain worked this way. I was in DBT, dialectical behavioral training, another thing I highly recommend. It helps with emotional regulation, which is something that us ADHDers struggle with. So, I just had a brain fart. Another thing that us ADHDers struggle with. What is the thing that us ADHDers struggle with? I don't know. I don't remember what I was talking about. So maybe I'll have to cut that out. Just another thing. What do we... I don't know. Well, a little bit of a brain fart there, and I lost my train of thought. So my brain was in the future somewhere, or in the past, or somewhere, but not present. So I apologize. So hence the abrupt cut from the previous statement to now. I'm just going to leave it in there though, because those of you who have ADHD, I'm sure can appreciate that. So anyway, I got the diagnosis. I started on meds. I wanted to take Strattera, which is the non-stimulant medication approved for ADHD, because I had been on Provigil stimulant when I had my head injury, and it did help. It helped tremendously to get me through that phase, but I had stopped it. And I know I hated the other one that everyone takes, that there's a shortage of, and now my brain again kind of flew out the window. This is my third time recording this, by the way, because I had some audio issues. So hopefully I remembered to plug my, yeah, I did. Okay. Okay. So anyway, let's go back. So I was doing all this therapy. I did the DBT, and I did it for like a year and a half, and it did help. And then I said to one of my friends who happens to have ADHD, I said, hey, do you think it's possible that I might have ADHD too? And she looked at me and she said, sister, of course you do. I've known you for 20 years, and I've known that since the moment I met you. And I just wanted to say, well, why didn't you say anything to me? And it could be that she thought I knew. So anyway, fast forward to me getting my diagnosis and going on meds. It wasn't quite the whole fog lifting thing that others have described with the stimulants, but it certainly was kind of the chatter in my head slowed. And I found out recently that not everybody has a dialogue, a noise in their brain constantly like I do. And that just kind of blew my mind, because it's either my brain making plans, or it's my brain coming up with ideas, or it's my brain learning new things, or it's my brain thinking about the past, or it's my brain thinking about the future, or it's my brain with some song on loop, or some just riff that it made up on its own on loop. There's always noise and chatter in my brain, and it makes it very difficult. When I'm hyper-focused is another ADHD trait, as you probably very well know. When I'm hyper-focused, I don't have that chatter. That seems to be the only time I don't have that chatter. And I can sometimes turn it off when I meditate. I've been meditating for about 40 years, but I've never been a regular meditator, not like every day, because I struggle to make habits that I follow every day. So I have been working hard since I got my diagnosis. I have been taking my meds pretty regularly. Every once in a while I'll slip up and I'll forget to take them for a few days. But the good thing about the Strattera, since it's not a stimulant, it is like an SSRI that it needs to build up in your blood in order to take effect. So if you forget a day, it doesn't have as big of an effect. I can definitely feel it when I forget a day, but it doesn't have as big an effect when you forget to take your stimulant medication. Now, I do still pair the Strattera with a low dose of Provigil, like a half dose of Provigil, on days when I really, really need to be focused. And usually that's when I'm working by myself. I did take one. I went to a writer's conference. I'm a writer, by the way, mainly poetry, one of the many interests I have as an ADHD person. And I went to a writing conference last fall, and I'm like, okay, I want to be focused. I want to be able to listen to these speakers. So I took the half dose of Provigil that I take on days when I need to be focused. And yeah, that didn't work so well. I felt manic all day, and I didn't feel like antsy. I just felt manic. And it wasn't a good feeling. So I realized that the only time I really can take that is when I have a project that I need to be focused on. I'm pretty much going to be working alone. I've been watching all these channels and learning all these coping strategies, and learning more about how my brain works, and it has helped tremendously. It's just night and day for me, and people who have watched me in this journey, or who maybe haven't seen me in a while, actually do comment on that it seems like I'm happier, it seems like I'm more focused. And the depression and anxiety that I have suffered for so many years has lessened quite a bit with the advent of taking the Strattera and getting the diagnosis and getting validated and knowing that I'm not stupid, I'm not inadequate, I'm not irresponsible. I'm very conscientious. I just struggle. I just struggle so hard. And learning that that's a normal part of an ADHD brain, and not because I'm a bad person, as so many voices, other people's voices that have cemented their way into my brain for so many years have told me, has made a world of difference. And in the last year or so, I've been exploring the possibility that I might be autistic in addition to having ADHD. There is somewhere in the range of a 60% comorbidity between ADHD and autism, especially in women. And don't quote me on that. That's somewhere rolling around in my brain. If you guys want, I will go ahead and find some studies and link them down. Just leave a comment telling me that you'd like a study or links to studies, or I'll put them in the description, one of the two. I started watching autism channels, and I started reading about autism in women, and I started listening to podcasts about autism in women. And I made friends who were, well, I have friends who are autistic, and I talked to them about autism. And they referred me to clinical tests that are online that are used by actual clinicians to help diagnose autism. And I scored in the upper half, or the mid to upper half of all of those clinical, almost all of those clinical tests, even amongst autistic people. So for those of you watching this thinking, she's not autistic, she can make eye contact with the camera, she can communicate, obviously, and I've learned, I thought autism was one particular thing. I've learned how big of a spectrum it really is. And there are so many things that point to me having autism as well. And in realizing that and kind of self-diagnosing, yes, and I know some of you out there are going to say, self-diagnosis isn't valid and what have you, and, whatever. I do believe I am autistic because of so many different things. I started a journal. I started taking notes, and things like having to have safe spaces. I had my own bedroom. I was the only girl in my household, in my family, but I had my own bedroom. But I still took a little step stool and I put it in my closet, and I brought a little gooseneck lamp on an extension cord and put it in there so I could go in my closet and just close myself in and read. I used to love to spin on the floor when I was a kid. I would go to, we didn't have one of those poles in the basement like a lot of people did, and I would love to go to my cousin's house so I could just spin and spin and spin and spin around in circles until my hand got burned. I always had secret spaces that I could go into and just kind of cuddle in and huddle in and feel secure. I have always taken things literally. Somebody tells me something and I take them at face value, and it hasn't served me well when it comes to people who are passive aggressive and have narcissistic tendencies and things like that, and I have found myself pulled into negative relationships because of that. I'm a bit naive sometimes when it comes to things. Echolalia, repeating things. Sometimes the earworm inside my head the noise inside my head is just a phrase repeated over and over again, or a riff repeated over and over again. I find myself, when I'm speaking to someone and talking to them, probably talking their ear off, and if it appears that they're not hearing me or understanding me, I will repeat myself. And then I realize I'm repeating myself probably for the wrong reason, that perhaps they have lost interest, which brings me to the whole social awkwardness thing. Since I was a kid, I always struggled making friends. I always struggled relating to other kids. Even when I tried hard to make friends, I was not accepted into many social groups. I struggled with my relationships with my brothers. I always tended to seek out the adults, or I sought out the younger kids, or I sat with the animals. I didn't always play with other kids. And it wasn't because I didn't want friends. I was desperate for friends. I was weird, I guess. And I was really smart. Not to brag, but, kids didn't like smart kids. I would raise my hand. I would raise my hand because I was excited about learning. We grew up with not a lot of money. So we didn't we didn't buy books. We didn't have an encyclopedia back then, long before the internet. You did your research in grade school in an encyclopedia. So, I borrowed the neighbor's Nancy Drew books. I borrowed the neighbor's Hardy Boys books to read. But I loved learning. In the summertime, I'd beg my mom to get me those workbooks. And I was always working, and I think the teachers finally told her to stop, because I was always working like a couple grades ahead. When I was in 6th or 7th grade, I was reading at a college sophomore level, which is another autistic trait, is having a very high reading level. Oh my gosh, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Oh, that goes with ADHD as well. But just taking everything to heart and feeling like when somebody is upset, that they're upset with you, they're mad at you. And it may be the case sometimes, but it's not always the case. And learning about that, learning that existed, and learning that was part of my ADHD makes it easier for me to step back when I start feeling that way and say, okay, step back. Let's reevaluate the situation. And it helps me to not get so anxious. That's probably where some of the ease and the anxiety comes from. Info dumping. Oh my gosh. Get me started on my favorite subjects, and I'll go on forever. And I will go on, and then I'll all of a sudden realize, oh my gosh, this person's eyes are glazed over. They've got their body angled towards the door, and they really want to move out the door. And so I have a hard time with it. Misophonia, just the sensitivities, the sensory sensitivities, the sensory sensitivity to sound. Oh my gosh. Just like cracking gum and clicking pens. And I once failed I probably would have failed it anyway, but I once failed a math test, but I would have done better because somebody kept clicking their pen, and the misophonia, you just feel this rage, and it's not like I ever did anything, but it's just your whole body tenses up. That's another ADHD thing. Auditory processing disorder. I had heard about that years ago. And I'd read about it. I didn't connect it to myself until I saw an autistic creator talk about the fact that sometimes they'll ask someone to repeat something because they didn't hear them. But then as the person is explaining it, they realize they did hear them. It just took their brain a moment to catch up. And I said, that happens to me. Not all the time, but it happens to me enough to notice. And I do get frustrated when I ask someone to repeat something and they repeat something in a little bit different way. It's like they think that I didn't understand the way they explained it, so they try to explain in a different way, when in reality I want them to repeat exactly what they said so that I can, because I've half grasped it. And then when they repeat it in a different way, my brain gets even more jumbled. So auditory processing disorder, and other sensory disorders. Since I was a kid, shoes, labels on clothes, things like that. I have a single hair under my shirt, and I can feel it, and I have to go into the bathroom, and I have to fish it out. and it's here or there or whatever. It is just so sensitive. The fear of being judged, and fear of being even perceived. Like, there's certain things that I can't do if I know someone is watching me. And this is very common amongst autistic people. A very strong need for justice. Since I was a kid, I remember watching I Love Lucy with my mom, or whatever. She had it on while she was cooking, and I was the youngest, so I was home longer than my brothers were in school. And I just remember getting so upset because Lucy got blamed for things that I didn't think that she should be blamed for. I had to actually stop watching I Love Lucy because that whole dynamic just stressed me out so much. Social awkwardness. Wow. That's huge for me. That I've always struggled with friends. I got better as I got older. Well, I got better when I got into junior high and high school. So as I said, we didn't have a lot of money. So our neighbors would give us their cast off books. So we'd always have a box of books in the basement, and I would go in the basement and fish them out. One time I saw The Valley of the Dolls, and I was probably 8-10 years old. I started to read it, and I just didn't get it. And so I put it back. And I was very naive about metaphors and double entendres and things like that, slang and sexual innuendos and stuff. As you're in puberty, I didn't get any of that, and made for some awkward conversations with people. But so when I was about 10, I found a book in the book box, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I am going to go back and read that book, and I will do a little video on that because I haven't read it since then. But I remember thinking, oh, okay, fake it till you make it. And when I think back, I think that's when, like, the Dale Carnegie book taught me how to mask. It taught me how to try to fit in. But in doing that, I lost a lot of myself. And this ADHD diagnosis and exploring this potential autism diagnosis and learning more about it and what have you has really opened up my life to me. And I've told a lot of people this in the last couple years, really in the last year or so. I feel reborn. And one of my new favorite creators, Autistic AF, and I apologize, and it means after 40, doesn't mean what you think it means, but Autistic after 40, he's also a late diagnosed autistic. He actually has an official diagnosis. He did a video recently, and I'll link it down below, where he says he felt like he was in adolescence again. And I was like, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly what I've been saying. I feel like I'm 20 again. And I feel like I'm just discovering who I am again. And I feel like I have hope. I have hope for having a fulfilled life for the first time in I don't know how long. Because I spent so much time banging my head up against the neurotypical wall and trying to fit in and not understanding why I couldn't do what everybody else could, that I just gave up, hoping that I might actually have hope and create a life worth living, if you will. Just, a good life. I'm going to take a little diversions here, a little side trip here. So I was watching an interview with Hannah Gatsby, and she's a comedian who is autistic, and she's amazing. She made a comment on getting her autism diagnosis. She said it's a framework, it's a prism through which you view your life, and it's so true. And after getting the ADHD diagnosis, looking back on all my memories and looking back on my life and looking at it through that different prism, huge, very huge. But what she said is, there will be things I can never be good at. Now I can just stop trying. Like getting the dishes done. I'm not going to worry about getting them done the same day. If they stay the night, overnight, I live by myself. Who cares? And she also said, I wrote these down because they were so significant. I always thought I'd get to the starting line of normal. And now I go, oh, no, I won't. So I'll just save a lot of energy with that scramble. Whatever normal means. So I have all of these major things that point toward autism. And I really do believe that I'm autistic, and not in the inability to support yourself kind of way, but in the way that a lot of people my age are discovering. So, pattern recognition and thinking in pictures, huge, huge for me. It's something, I think that's why I was such a good troubleshooter when it came to my instructional design career, and why I did so well as a database developer, and why I do so well as a knitting pattern designer. So essentially, this channel is intended to talk about things like mental health and talk about things like depression, anxiety. I'm only going to speak of things of which I know. I am by no means an expert. I will speak to my personal lived experiences, and I hope that people get something out of it. That's the whole reason for doing this, is to give back to the community that has given me so much, and to help others move forward. I was 61, for God's sake, when I found out, almost 61, just days shy of my 61st birthday, when I got my ADHD diagnosis. How crazy is that? And a lot of people that get these diagnoses this late in life, they go through a huge grieving process. And they think, oh my gosh, my life would have been so much different. I could have done this. I could have done that. I could have done the other thing. And, my brain sometimes wants to go there. But for the most part, I am so freaking grateful. I'm so freaking grateful that I have answers now. And I have ways to help my brain. I am learning different ways to help my brain. I'm learning that I can't expect myself to do things in a neurotypical way, because my brain won't work that way. I can't tell you the number of how to get organized books that I've read over the years that have just not helped, and have done more harm, because I get more frustrated. And speaking of organization, I think that's one of the things that kind of triggered this whole path down, am I autistic or not, people. But one of the things that really keyed me into maybe I am ADHD and autistic is that I have this extreme need for organization, and I have this extreme inability to stay organized. My autistic part of me will get myself uber organized, but then the ADHD side of me gets into a project and, is like some crazy animated character that throws everything around. And then the autistic person just sits in the corner of the couch, kind of rocking, not knowing where to begin to get organized again. So anyway, thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope I haven't popped around too much. I am looking forward to sharing a lot of things with you. And coming up in a video, I have a huge life change coming up. I am putting everything into storage. This recording space that you're seeing me in now, this is my current apartment. My lease is up in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I am hitting the road. I am going out east. I am hopefully going to Europe for a couple months. And then when I get back, I'm going out west. And I'm going to see friends that I haven't seen in ages. I'm going to see family I haven't seen in ages. I'm going to meet friends I've never met before that I just know strictly virtually. And I'm so looking forward to this. And I think this is a really wonderful way to start my new life, as a new me. So I hope you will join me on that journey as well. I think I'll probably be posting the videos from that on the other channel, the Art Design Heart channel. So I hope you'll join me over there. Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me. If not, that's okay. I'm glad you stayed with me this long. If you did stay with me this long, please enter a, let's see, how about a fire symbol down below in the comments down below, and we'll see how many people made it to the end of the video. That doesn't, reflect in the YouTube algorithms. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again. Oh, and why ADHD? Did I say that? I might have. If I didn't, it's an auxiliary channel to the creative channel. And also because a lot of people who have autism and ADHD call themselves AUDHD. 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 Anyway, autism and ADHD. So I thought, well, I have a multiplicity of things other than that. So AUD, or AUX, X is the unknown number, AUX, DHD. There you have it. I made up a new term. I'm a poet. I can't help it. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!